Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Bowo. Hope you're doing good today and just enjoying the day. It's a wonderful Tuesday. Yesterday I wasn't able to get into the Morning Devo because I was up on the hill taking the motorcycle up on a cruise with some friends up to Mount Lemmon, which was just great. Just had a wonderful time. And so today I'm in the devotion. Welcome. You could always check out the archives at my YouTube channel, Bo Willette, and go through the Bible with me. And if you've never gone through the Bible, this is a totally good opportunity for you to check it out, get through the scriptures, and do it with a guy who is a SoCal, super progressive dude. And reading the Bible certainly changed a lot of the way I think. And I'm sure it would you too if you just took some time and combed through it. Esther 8 is another very relevant chapter as we're going through the book of Esther. And it really is relevant to our day and age. We're going to see it talks about government and laws being passed and that there is a place for us as Christians to get involved in the government and in the legislative process. I think chapter 8 is a great one for that. It's interesting, growing up a secular progressive guy, you tend to rag on the Bible a lot because of, quote, the patriarchy. And that was always really big when I was young, and it's still big today. It's even grown into a lot of, just in a sense, kind of progressive rhetoric. And I'm not sure anymore it means what we think it means, but that's for another podcast, so to speak. But the amazing thing about Esther is that this is a whole book dedicated to a female that changes the whole course of the Jewish people, if you will, fighting for life, and it all comes at the hands of a young woman, which is really radical. And I'm not sure if we sometimes grasp just how radical of a book this is, to be just kind of stuck in this section of history, of Israel history, by Ezra and Nehemiah in our Bibles, where you have two males that really take leadership in getting the temple built back in Israel and the wall that surrounds Jerusalem constructed. But here, back in the Persian Empire, where most of the Jews are still living, here you have a woman of all, making the greatest difference and being so savvy and so wise and humble and meek and courageous to step out when she needed to. And sometimes us, quote, progressives fail to think of just what a radical book this is in the Bible. Again, we sometimes tend to want to just rip on it instead of just seeing the obvious, that obviously one of the biggest heroes in the Bible, in Jewish history, is a woman, and a young woman at that. So Esther, through all of these wonderful character attributes I shared, saves Israel. But now she saves, in a sense, Mordecai, her cousin, from getting hanged by the government official Haman. And that managed to happen. Instead of Mordecai getting hung by Haman, Haman got hung by the king. But now you have this law in place in the Persian Empire, which is supposed to eradicate all Jewish people in the kingdom. And so that's where we pick up in Esther chapter 8. And on that day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai became king. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. So the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. Man, you want to talk about how hate really affects us. Haman had so much hate in his heart towards Mordecai, towards the Jewish people, that he really just, went off on him. And he never really thought of the consequences of his hate. And this is a word for us, is we always have to look at, what is the consequences for our hate? When we're picketing, when we're doing our, quote, activism, what is the consequences of our hate? And what I mean by that is sometimes when we're out picketing or doing activism or things like that, the heart is not in a right spot. There is a animosity and there is a hatred. And that hatred could turn very violent. And it's scary today to think, when you watch some YouTube clips of some people going to the college campus just to ask questions to college students, and college students surround that person on such a mass level, right? Almost like a mob level. And they have such hate in their heart to where you see it just spilling out of those college students, where they're not wanting to dialogue or talk. They just use propaganda terms. They're just using that speak, that 1984 Orwellian speak. You're racist, you're this, you're that. It's just these throw words, right? But thing is it comes from a hateful heart. Something's going wrong, going awry in the heart. And Haman had a lot of that. But isn't it interesting that everything that Haman had ended up being given over to Mordecai, his enemy? And isn't that so sad? It's like, where does hate really lead? What does it really do? What kind of, what's the end product? What's the fruit of all this hate? For Haman, it was his own demise, right? It was his own death. And what he never fathomed that would ever happen, which is Mordecai getting everything he had, happened. And that's just how hate works. You can hate so much. You can spend so much of your time just hating and hating and hating. And before you know it, things don't happen the way you want them to happen. You try to control it. You try to force it. You try to coerce it. But something totally different happens, right? And this certainly happened to Haman. And, so we got to watch our hate and where it's taking us. And it can happen to the Christians as well, where there's so much hate. It's funny. People don't want to talk about Trump because Trump excites a lot of hate. But isn't that interesting? It's like in the Christian, there's a lot of people that excite a lot of hate as well. And, and that's the problem is, people have a ton of hate in them. I never met Trump. I never met Biden. I've never met Kamala Harris. I don't know these people personally. I mean, sure, you can judge a tree by its fruit, and we're to do that. But I don't know these people. How much hate should I have in my heart for these people? I got to be careful of that. Because that hate can really erode a heart and erode a mind. So before you know it, you're being violent, not on the people, not on the objects of your hate, but you're now starting to move your hate into innocent people. And Haman had such a hatred for Mordecai, not because anything Mordecai did to Haman. All Mordecai did was not bow to the guy. But Haman, so filled with pride, so filled with hatred, he ended up trying to go at every Jew that was there in Persia. Innocent people. But isn't that interesting? Your hate, instead of really being towards that object of your hate, of what you're saying is the object of your hate, it moves to the innocent person. So sad, right? And so it says, now Esther spoke again to the king and fell down at his feet and implored him with tears to counteract the evil of Haman the Agagite and the scheme which he had devised against the Jews. Remember that law that he put into practice, right? Haman did, right? He manipulated the government. He paid off the government. He paid off the centralized government system through coercion. And so lo and behold, a legislative bill gets passed to exterminate the Jewish people. And this is what Esther now is speaking to the king about. And the king held out his golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood there, it says, before the king and said, yes, if it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the king seems right, and this seems right to the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be in writing to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews, for all who are all in all of the king's provinces. So all the Jews living in the area, we're going to see just how vast that area is. This is the legislative law that was passed by Haman. And just as in our day, it's amazing how the Bible is so relevant. Just as in our day, there's legislative laws, of course, that are there to hurt people and even to murder people. That's hard to believe, but there is laws passed that make it okay to kill a human life, and an innocent human life, right? An innocent, not that the human has done anything right or wrong, deserving of such a action, but it is in law that it's okay to do it, to take this human's life. And so, we have a lot of Haman laws as well, I guess we could say. But notice how Esther is just there interceding for the people, work it through the legislative branch, if you will. And I love that. There are Christians that are working on legislative action, and that's good. Nothing's wrong with that. We should never look at the government and go like, oh man, we should stay out of it completely. No, there's opportunities. Here, a woman is in the legislative world pleading with the king to, let's enact a different bill, if you will. Let's get this bill passed, and so we can move forward to not do such a horrible act like genocide to the Jewish people. And they've revealed now that that Mordecai and Esther are cousins. They're Jews. So, the king now realizes, whoa, Esther is a Jewish woman, and he sees her passion for her people. And Esther says, how can I endure such destruction of my countrymen? And don't you just love her heart? Like, how can I endure this wrong law? How can I endure this? I mean, how? And that's a big question to us and as a person. How can I endure this wrong legislation? And I have to ask that question even growing up. Like, why is it okay to have this kind of legislation? And I have to wrestle with that. Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, that we really are talking about freedom, but really we're not. We're really not talking about freedom or progression at all. We're actually talking about regression, right? To go against the family unit, right? Mom, dad, child, that's not progression, right? Yeah, to take a child's life, that's not progression, right? Nothing's progressive about those things by the idea of having progress. No. The big a lot of kids nowadays grow up, a lot of teenagers, and they go, man, I don't want kids. And a lot of them don't think of having children even in, as they get older and older. And children are seen as a bad thing. And isn't that anything but progression right there, man? That's not progressive at all, right? That's not progressing even your family line. That's been going on for thousands of years. That's looking at that 1,000 years of family line and literally just thinking that you have more, that you you want to do more in life, in your life, that's greater than having children, than progressing that ancestral line. That sounds a little narcissistic, man. That's for sure. And it's something to really think about and go, man, am I just being a narcissistic person? And so here the queen is really burdened, by this. And so it says, then King Ahasuerus said to the queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, indeed, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. You yourself write a decree concerning the Jews as you please, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for whatever is written in the king's name is sealed by the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So, hey, let's do something in the king's name. Let's get this law changed up and get it on the right track. So you see all that of what it takes to get, in a sense, laws passed. And so we shouldn't, be too critical of that. I mean, that's an important part. Maybe we need to get involved in that. Maybe that's something we can think about in our day today. Hey, how can I get more involved? Maybe I need to write some letters. Maybe I need to make some calls. Maybe I need to take some time. That kind of stuff. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces of India to Ethiopia. Whoa! We get an idea how big this empire was, right? India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all, to every province in his own script, to every people in their own language, and to the Jews in their own script and language. A lot of languages, a lot of people groups, this is very diverse. The world is a very diverse world. We have been conquered over and over and over. Different people have conquered different people. It didn't matter if you were black, white, red, whatever, purple. Your own people did it to yourselves half the time. It was usually economic reasons why people did horrible things to people, and they ended up in where they were at. In the Persian Empire, you had a lot of variation of people as well. People that were considered, of course, slaves, people that were considered free, people of all different languages, again, ethnicities, different backgrounds, big empire, right? Filled with a lot of different people. And here we see that they're going to make sure all these provinces get this new legislative action intact, because time is of the essence for sure. And so the king does seal it. They send it out on the fastest horses they can find. And it says in verse 11, by these letters the king permitted the Jews who were in every city to gather together and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them, both little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. Hey, if someone's, it gave protective rights to the Jews, this legislative action. That is really radical, very awesome. A lot of times people kind of, talk a lot about gun laws in the country. But here you see a gun law being passed, if you will, for the Jewish people to be able to be protected from those that would seek their harm. Sometimes, if you have a society where the only people that have any kind of arms is the government itself, they have a military branch, right? And they're dictated by the hegemony, then there is no protection from the hegemonical power structure. That power structure has all the power, right? And they can enforce that whenever they want. Yeah, very, very Huxleyan, very Orwellian, and very totalitarian. And we've seen this before in the past in many, many countries. This has happened. And it's funny, we argue a lot about, our right to bear arms. But this is an old argument. This is something that the Jews knew they needed in the Persian Empire. And sure enough, it gets passed so that they can protect themselves. It's important to protect your family. Take care of those things. You never know who's wants to come at you. And unfortunately, a whole government passed a law to kill all the Jews. And they were coerced to do it, but this is the action that had to be rectified, and why the Jews needed to be able to protect themselves. And so we see this happening. A copy of the document was to be issued as a decree in every province and published for all the people, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers who rode on royal horses went out, hastened and pressed by the king's command that the decree was issued in Shushan, the citadel. So they are putting this out as quick as they can. Time is of the essence. Time is coming where that law was to be enacted, where people were to actually assassinate, kill, murder Jewish people. And so the king is now getting the news out as quick as possible not to do so. Wouldn't that be cool if life can be preserved, if again laws could be passed that were pro-life, right, and not killing human beings. So it says, so Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal appeal of blue and white, and a great crown of gold and garment of fine linen. So Mordecai comes out, and he's now put in this amazing place of position. And the Jews had light and gladness, joy and honor. And in every province and city, wherever the king's command and decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. Then many of the people of the land became Jews because fear of the Jews fell upon them. And I think the last point that I get from this little section in chapter 8 of Esther is that the Jews have joy. And as they have joy, it says many people in the land came to be Jews. Isn't that amazing? They came, it says, people of the land became Jews because the Jews, because of fear of the Jews fell upon them. They looked at the Jewish people and they went, wow. Look at, and they saw that they had a vigor and a spirit about them and a heart, and also the ability to take care of themselves. And they also saw an incredible amount of joy in their life. Did you read that? And man, I got to imagine that joy just overflowed into the life of many people. And that many people became Jews, in a sense, started worshiping God, Yahweh, simply because of the joy that the Jewish people experienced. And this is amazing. Haman in the book is a guy who's filled with hate, and he wants all the accolades, but it ends up not happening, right? People standoffish on all that hate. Here, the Jewish people are the people that, don't have anything, and yet they get such great news in the law being overturned of their genocide, and they have incredible joy. And as they grow in joy, people are attracted to that joy and come to God. They're attracted to even the way the Jewish people are, their heart, their commitment to Yahweh, those kind of things. And I always have to think through my life, is my joy what brings people to Christ? Are people attracted to that joy, or is there too much hate in my heart that's crowding the ability for people to really come into a right relationship with God through me? Because I'm not filled with joy, but all they see in me is a bunch of hate. So it's really interesting. You want to get and bring people into the kingdom of God. Maybe they need to see your joy. Your joy in Jesus. Your joy shows the value of Christ, right? When you value something, you have a lot of joy in it. And so, hey, what a great Devo today. There's a place and a position for things in the law. Don't just criticize it, but maybe get involved in it. and do it the right way, not through the way Haman did it, through coercive money streams to pay off people for legislation, but do it honestly. Hey, this is what needs to happen. I believe this is right ethically, and this is why. And go about it, try to persuade that way. And we see also the incredible fruits of this wonderful woman's life, Esther, and how important of a role she played in really protecting life. Do I have that kind of heart to protect life? And am I willing to take the courage to do so? And also I see the wonderful thing of, do I have joy in my heart that brings people into a relationship with Christ? Or is there too much hate in there? Good stuff. So you guys have a good one, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.